It started with a bark that cracked the stillness of the night like a thunderclap. A bark so fierce, so raw, it sent shivers racing down every spine in the neighborhood. It wasn't just noise. It was a warning, an alarm, a primal scream that cut through the quiet air and left behind a trail of goosebumps. Rex, the seasoned canine with a coat as dark as midnight and eyes like burning amber, stood rigid in the middle of the manicured lawn, his body tense, hackles raised, every muscle straining, toward the white clapboard house across the street. The neighborhood had known Rex for years. He was the police department's pride, a decorated dog who had sniffed out explosives, tracked fugitives, and once even saved a child from drowning. But tonight, Rex wasn't the gentle, reliable dog everyone knew. Tonight he was something else entirely, feral, wild, almost desperate. Inside that house, the Miller family was supposed to be celebrating. Emily and Jake Miller had just brought home their newborn daughter, Harper, barely a week old, wrapped in soft pink blankets and the scent of new beginnings. Friends had dropped by earlier with casseroles and flowers, cooing over the baby in the light-filled living room. Emily had felt a warm glow inside her chest, the kind of happiness that wraps you up like a blanket and makes you believe, even for a moment, that everything will be okay. But now, as Rex's bark tore through the night, Emily sat bolt upright in bed, clutching the baby monitor in her trembling hands. Jake's voice was tight with confusion. "Is that Rex?" Emily could barely breathe. "Why is he barking like that?" Across the street, Officer Daniels, Rex's handler, struggled to hold him back. The leash strained like a rope ready to snap, Rex's paws digging furrows into the grass. His teeth bared as he snarled at the Millers' front door. It wasn't a bark of random excitement or frustration. This was targeted. Daniels tried to calm him down, but Rex was beyond words. His eyes locked onto something inside. The house. Something invisible to everyone else. Something that made him throw his entire weight forward, as if the leash could hold back a hurricane. Emily's heart raced. She grabbed Jake's arm. "Something's wrong," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the baby's soft breathing. From the crib. Jake frowned, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and got up. The monitor in Emily's hand crackled softly, but Harper lay there in her crib, peaceful, her tiny chest rising and falling in time with the lullaby music playing faintly from a stuffed animal in the corner. And yet, there was something else. A flicker. A barely there shiver in the air. Emily shook her head, trying to dispel the chill that crept up her spine. Rex barked again, and this time, it was followed by a strange, almost mechanical whirring sound. Barely audible but distinct, emanating from the baby monitor. Jake froze. "Did you hear that?" Emily's blood turned to ice. Suddenly, the lights in the nursery dimmed for a split second like a power surge, then returned to normal. Emily's eyes darted to the crib. Harper was still there, still breathing, still normal. Right? Jake tried to laugh it off, but it was hollow. "Maybe the monitor's glitching?" Emily didn't answer. She couldn't tear her gaze away from the monitor screen, from the soft pink shape in the crib, from the impossibility of that sound, an electronic hum, a mechanical pulse that had no place in a baby's room. And outside, Rex was losing his mind. Daniels's voice, strained and breathless, cut through the night as he tried to haul Rex back. "What the hell, buddy? What are you smelling?" Rex's snarl grew louder, his body trembling with the force of his fury. His nose pointed like an arrow straight at the nursery window, as if he could see through the walls. Jake moved toward the window, pulling aside the curtain. He looked down at Rex, and for a moment his heart stuttered. The dog's eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, not from any supernatural force, but from the reflection of the porch light. Amber, burning, intense. "Should we call the cops?" Emily's voice cracked as she clutched Harper closer. Jake hesitated. Daniels was already here, but what the hell was happening? And then it hit him. Rex wasn't just barking, he was warning. Emily's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Jake glanced at Harper lying there so small, so fragile, and suddenly, it was as if the entire room felt colder. Hey, if you're gripped by this story so far, don't forget to subscribe to our channel Heroes for Animals, where we bring you true stories of extraordinary dogs like Rex. Because some heroes walk on four paws, Emily whispered, almost to herself. It's like he's trying to tell us something. Jake swallowed hard. The mechanical hum returned, this time slightly louder, followed by a flicker on the monitor screen. A brief, glitchy flash where the image distorted, pixelated, and for a split second, the baby's face on the screen wasn't Harper's. It was someone else. Jake stumbled back, the air knocked out of his lungs. Did you see that? He gasped. Emily stared, wide-eyed, her breath caught in her throat. The image stabilized. Harper, sound asleep, as if nothing had happened. But Jake wasn't imagining things. Outside, Rex's barks crescendoed into a desperate howl, as if his voice alone could tear down the walls, get inside, protect the baby. And in that moment, something shifted in Emily's chest. Fear gave way to a gnawing sense of dread. This wasn't just a dog barking at a baby. This was a dog trying to save a life, or maybe stop something worse from happening. She wrapped her arms tighter around Harper, and for the first time since they'd brought her home, she wasn't sure if she was holding her daughter or something else entirely. Jake couldn't shake the image from his mind. The way the baby monitor had glitched just for a split second, replacing Harper's tiny, perfect face with something else, someone else. He stared at the monitor like it might do it again, the grainy screen casting a faint glow in the darkened room. But Harper was still there, asleep, her cheeks flushed pink, her tiny hands curled into fists. Emily sat in the rocking chair, her body tense, arms crossed tightly over her chest. The lullaby music from the stuffed bunny in the corner tinkled on softly, but to Jake, it sounded like a funeral dirge. Outside, Rex had finally calmed, though he paced back and forth. In the yard, casting glances toward the nursery window like a sentry on high alert, Daniel stood nearby, hands on his hips, watching Rex with a mix of confusion and concern. Jake exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in his shoulders like a vice grip. I'm telling you, Em, he muttered, low enough so only she could hear. That wasn't just a glitch. Emily rubbed her arms like she was cold, though the room was warm enough. What are you saying? That our baby monitor's haunted? Jake hesitated, unsure how to say it without sounding crazy. I don't know, but something feels off. A soft cooing sound drifted from the crib. Harper stirred, her tiny fingers flexing. For a moment, everything seemed normal, just a sleepy baby in a safe suburban home. And yet, the hair on Jake's arm stood up. The next morning, the sun rose, bright and warm, but the unease lingered. Jake called out sick from work, blaming a stomach bug, though the truth was he couldn't leave the house. Couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something was wrong. Emily, frazzled and exhausted, tried to go about her day like nothing had happened, feeding Harper, folding laundry, scrolling mindlessly through her phone. But Jake could see the tightness in her jaw, the way her hands trembled when she adjusted the baby's blanket. He busied himself in the garage, pulling out an old baby monitor from a box of Harper's shower gifts. If the monitor was glitching, maybe they'd gotten a faulty one. But when he set up the new monitor, same thing. That faint mechanical hum, barely audible but there, like a low-frequency buzz tickling the edge of his hearing. It wasn't his imagination. He stared at the screen, feeling the weight of it settle in his chest. That's when he remembered the camera. Jake had installed a security camera above the nursery door months ago, part of his DIY home setup. Nest cameras, motion sensors, the works. He hadn't checked the footage in a while, but now he had a reason. He logged into the system on his laptop, scrolling through the previous night's feed. Everything looked normal until it didn't. At 2:14 a.m., just after Rex started barking, the video froze. A single frame flickered, and then a brief black screen. When the feed returned, Harper lay motionless in the crib, but the timestamp had skipped ahead. By 7 seconds, Jake's pulse thundered in his ears. 7 seconds. Gone. He scrubbed back and forth on the timeline, trying to make sense of it. The frame before the glitch, nothing unusual. But if he paused it at the right moment, just before the feed cut out, there was something. A shape, a shadow, a faint outline leaning over the crib, its form distorted like static on an old TV. He blinked, leaning closer. It wasn't Emily. It wasn't him. It wasn't anyone he recognized. It was just there, and then it wasn't. Jake's mouth went dry. He didn't tell Emily right away. What could he say? "Hey, honey, I think our baby's being visited by a shadow figure in the middle of the night." Instead, he called Daniels. The officer showed up an hour later, looking tired but alert, Rex trotting faithfully at his side. Jake led them into the kitchen, shutting the door behind him. Harper's soft baby noises floated in from the monitor. On the counter, Daniels raised an eyebrow. "All right, Jake, what's going on?" Jake exhaled hard. "You saw how Rex was acting last night, right? He wasn't just barking, he was going nuts, like he was trying to warn us." Daniels nodded slowly. "Rex doesn't spook easy. If he was reacting like that, something's up." Jake hesitated. "I think it's Harper." Daniels' face tightened. "What do you mean?" Jake swallowed. "I don't know how to explain it. The baby monitor, the security footage, and there's gaps. And on the monitor, there was a face. Just for a second, it wasn't Harper's." Daniels stared at him, processing. "You think someone's been in the house?" Jake's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's not normal." Rex, who had been lying quietly at Daniels' feet, suddenly sat up, ears pricking. His nose twitched, head tilting toward the monitor. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Jake turned, heart hammering, as the monitor screen flickered. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, there it was again, the shadow. Daniel stood abruptly, his hand resting on his belt, eyes sharp. "I'm calling this in." Jake grabbed his arm. "Wait. Just listen." The faint mechanical hum pulsed through the monitor, steady, rhythmic. Daniels frowned. "That's not normal. That's equipment." Jake's stomach twisted. "What kind of equipment?" Daniels didn't answer. He looked at Rex, who was now pacing, hackles up. Jake felt the chill of the unknown settle deeper into his bones. That night they set up a plan. Daniels agreed to stay for a few hours, keeping watch from his cruiser parked across the street. Jake and Emily tried to act normal, tried to settle into a routine, but their nerves were frayed. Every creak of the house, every soft beep from the baby monitor felt like a threat. As midnight neared, Emily sat in the nursery, rocking Harper slowly. Jake sat nearby, scrolling through forums on his laptop, parenting boards, tech threads, conspiracy sites. He wasn't sure what he was even looking for, and then he stumbled across something that made his blood run cold. A forum post, buried deep in an obscure tech board titled Project Echo Memory Implants in Infants, Experimental Trials in Suburban Areas. Jake's breath caught. The post was vague, filled with half-baked theories and redacted documents. But there was a line that stood out. Subjects may exhibit irregular biofeedback patterns detectable by certain animals. K9 units recommended for observation. Jake's stomach dropped. Outside, Rex barked once, sharp, insistent. Jake met Emily's eyes. They both knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned in, slow, lazy circles above him. Every creak in the house felt magnified. Every soft sound from the baby monitor felt like a siren blaring in his ears. Beside him, Emily stirred, sighing softly, exhausted beyond words. Harper was finally asleep after a fussy evening, the monitor's soft hum a constant background buzz in their darkened room. But Jake couldn't shake the words he'd read on that forum. Subjects may exhibit irregular biofeedback patterns, detectable by certain animals. K9 units recommended for observation. His stomach twisted. What the hell did that even mean? Was Harper a subject? He sat up quietly, swung his legs over the side of the bed, and stared at the monitor screen on the nightstand. Harper's tiny form lay still, swaddled in her blanket, a picture of innocence. But to Jake, it felt like watching a horror movie unfold in slow motion, where the monster isn't what you see, but what you feel lurking just out of sight. Downstairs, a soft click echoed from the baby gate. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He crept out of the bedroom, careful not to wake Emily, and tiptoed down the stairs. The house was bathed in the dim glow of the porch light filtering through the curtains, and there, sitting at the bottom of the stairs, was Rex. The dog sat perfectly still, head tilted slightly, eyes locked onto the nursery door down the hall. His ears twitched, his body tense like a coiled spring, as if waiting for a command, or sensing something Jake couldn't see. Jake swallowed hard. "Good boy, Rex," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Rex didn't move. He just stared, unblinking, a low growl vibrating deep in his chest. Jake's skin crawled. The next morning, Jake decided he couldn't sit on this anymore. He called Daniels, who agreed to swing by after his shift. In the meantime, Jake tried to keep things as normal as possible. Emily fed Harper at the kitchen table, humming softly to herself while scrolling through her phone. The sun streamed in through the window, the smell of coffee and baby lotion filling the air. For a moment, it almost felt normal, until Jake caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. A tiny scratch. Right there, on the side of Harper's neck. Barely visible, almost like a paper cut, but it hadn't been there before. He was sure of it. "Emily," he said slowly, trying to keep his voice calm. "Did you see this?" Emily frowned, leaning in. "Oh, maybe it's from her nails," she offered weakly. Jake nodded, though a pit grew in his stomach. The scratch was too clean, too precise, like something sharp had been there. That afternoon, Daniels arrived with Rex, who immediately perked up the moment they stepped through the door. The dog's nose twitched, and he moved with purpose, sniffing the air, the walls, the floor. Jake gestured toward the nursery. "Rex keeps focusing there." Daniels followed, his brow furrowed. They stepped into the room, where Harper slept soundly in her crib, bathed in the soft glow of a nightlight shaped like a moon. Rex walked straight to the crib, sniffed once, then bristled, teeth bared in a low, warning growl. Daniel's eyes widened. "That's not normal." Emily looked like she might cry. "What does it mean?" Daniels glanced at Jake, then back at Rex. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Later that evening, as Daniels dug deeper into department contacts, Jake took to the internet, again, determined to make sense of the strange hum coming from the monitor. He found a subreddit dedicated to strange frequencies and electronic interference. Most of it was junk, people rambling about ghosts and aliens, but a buried post caught his attention. It mentioned biofrequency patterns detected in some consumer-grade monitors, specifically those near research facilities or military bases. Jake's breath caught. They lived just 20 miles from a decommissioned research lab, a place Jake had always assumed was empty. But what if it wasn't? What if... Before he could finish the thought, a notification popped up on his phone, a message from Daniels. "Check the base of the crib. Something's off." Jake froze, then bolted up the stairs. In the nursery, he gently lifted Harper from the crib, holding her close as Emily hovered nearby, looking worried. Jake ran his hands along the crib, feeling for anything unusual. His fingers brushed against the mattress seams, the wooden slats, nothing. And then, under the baseboard, his fingertips caught on something sharp. A thin strip of metal, barely visible, wedged between the crib slats. Jake's heart pounded. He carefully pried it out, revealing a tiny device no bigger than a flash drive. "What the hell is this?" Emily whispered. Before Jake could answer, Rex let out a sharp bark, startling them both. Daniel's voice crackled through Jake's phone. "Jake, are you there? We need to talk. I think I know what you're dealing with." Jake's pulse raced. Emily clutched Harper tighter. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Jake stared at the device in his hand, feeling the weight of it settle in his chest like a stone. "I don't know," he said softly. "But we're not safe. If you're following this story, make sure to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for the next part. You won't believe what happens next." Jake didn't sleep that night. He stayed up watching the monitor, watching Harper, watching the shadows stretch and shift in the corners of the room. Rex lay at the foot of the crib, eyes glowing faintly in the dark, his body tense and alert. And somewhere, deep down, Jake knew this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. Jake couldn't shake the image of the device from his mind. It sat on the kitchen counter, wrapped in a dish towel, but it felt like it might start humming any second. Like some alien artifact they should have buried, not touched. Daniels had left an hour ago, promising to run the serial number through some contacts at the precinct. Emily had tried to act like everything was fine, but Jake could see it in her eyes. She was barely holding it together. And Harper was different. She slept longer than usual. Her skin looked a shade too pale. And when Jake tried to tickle her belly, she didn't giggle the way she usually did. She just stared at him with those big wide eyes, unblinking, as if she was watching him from somewhere far away. The house felt heavier somehow, like the air itself was thicker, harder to breathe. Rex paced the living room like a soldier on patrol, his nails clicking on the hardwood floor. He paused every few minutes, nose twitching, ears alert, then let out a low growl before moving on. Jake couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his car keys. "Where are you going?" Emily called after him, her voice tight. "I'm going to figure out what the hell is going on," he said, his hand on the doorknob. Jake didn't know exactly where he was going, but his gut told him to start at the old research facility. It was a half-hour drive through winding roads and abandoned farmland. The place had been shuttered for years, supposedly decommissioned after budget cuts and red tape, but Jake wasn't buying it anymore. He parked across the street, engine idling, and stared at the chain-link fence surrounding the property. The building loomed in the distance, gray concrete, cracked windows, weeds growing through the pavement, except there was a single light on, a dim, flickering glow coming from one of the side windows. Jake's stomach turned. Back at home, Emily tried to stay busy, folding laundry and wiping down counters, anything to keep her mind off the gnawing fear in her chest. But then Harper let out a sharp, piercing cry. Emily dropped the dish towel and ran to the nursery. Harper was sitting up, something she hadn't done before, staring straight at the door. And standing there just inside the doorway was a man Emily had never seen before. Tall, thin, wearing a white lab coat. His face was pale, gaunt, with hollow cheeks and thin lips pressed into a tight line. His eyes were dark and unblinking, fixed on Harper like she was a specimen in a jar. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she whispered, backing toward the crib. The man tilted his head, as if studying her. "I'm here to check on the child," he said, his voice low and calm, like a doctor trying to soothe a nervous patient. Emily's hands shook as she reached for her phone, but it wasn't in her pocket. Rex snarled from the hallway, then lunged. The man's eyes darted toward the sound, and in a flash, he slipped something into his pocket, a small black device, and turned to leave. Emily screamed. Rex charged, teeth bared, jaws snapping. The man moved fast, almost too fast, slipping out the front door and vanishing into the night. Emily collapsed onto the floor, clutching Harper to her chest, sobbing. Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket just as he was about to leave the parking lot by the research lab. It was Emily. Her voice was shaky, panicked. "There was a man in the house. He tried to get to Harper. Rex scared him off." Jake's blood ran cold. "Stay there. Lock the doors. I'm coming home." Midway through the drive, Jake's hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. His mind raced with questions. Who was that man? What did he want with Harper? Rex had saved them again, and if you're following this story, you have to subscribe to Heroes for Animals. These dogs are more than just pets. They're protectors, heroes who risk it all. Don't miss what happens next. When Jake got home, Emily was sitting on the couch, rocking Harper in her arms, her face pale and streaked with tears. Rex lay at her feet, eyes still locked on the front door, body tense. Jake knelt beside her. "Tell me everything," he said softly. Emily swallowed. He said, "He was here to check on the child. He had a lab coat like a doctor. But he didn't belong here, Jake. He wasn't supposed to be here." Jake glanced at Harper. She was calm now, sucking on her pacifier, her wide eyes focused. On the ceiling. Something about that stare made Jake's stomach twist. That night Jake couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, the device they'd found earlier sitting in front of him. He turned it over in his hands. There was a tiny engraved serial number. It read, Echo 4G719. Jake typed it into a search engine. Nothing. Then, on a hunch, he added Echo Project to the search. A single result popped up, an archived PDF file on a forgotten government server. The document was heavily redacted, with long black bars covering most of the text. But the words Jake could see chilled him to the bone. Experimental memory transference in early-stage development subjects. Observation protocols include K9 detection units. Unauthorized civilian exposure, risk level 5. Terminate as necessary. Jake stared at the screen, his hands trembling. They weren't crazy. This wasn't just some glitch in the baby monitor. Harper was part of something bigger, something dangerous. And now, they were in it. Whether they wanted to be or not. The house felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Jake sat at the kitchen table, the device from the crib in his hand, turning it over and over like it might reveal its secrets through touch alone. Emily paced the floor, Harper asleep in her arms while Rex lay at the front door, his ears up, body tense. He hadn't relaxed since the man in the lab coat had appeared. If anything, Rex seemed more on edge, like he was waiting for another attack. The soft glow of the baby monitor on the counter flickered once, then returned to normal. Jake stared at it, his heart pounding. Emily broke the silence, her voice tight. "What are we supposed to do, Jake? We can't stay here. That man, he's going to come back." Jake rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. I know, but where could they go? Who could they trust? Daniels hadn't called back yet, and every second that ticked by made Jake feel like they were slipping deeper into something they couldn't escape. He glanced down at the device again. The serial number burned into his mind. Echo 4G719. There had to be more to this. Jake booted up his laptop, the screen's glow sharp against the darkness. He went back to the PDF he'd found, the one mentioning experimental memory transference and K9 detection units. Rex shifted, ears twitching as if he sensed the tension in the room. Jake's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He tried combinations. Echo 4G719. Project Echo, infant memory transference. Most of the searches led to dead ends, government error pages, broken links, until one result stopped him cold. A dark web forum. The thread title, Echo Units. They're here, and they're growing. Jake clicked, his breath shallow. The page was crude. White text on a black background. Usernames scrambled into nonsense strings. Timestamps jumping in and out like a broken clock. One post stood out. Echo units can be identified by subtle markings on the skin, typically behind the ear or along the shoulder blade. They exhibit rapid developmental milestones and altered emotional responses. Detection often requires non-human scent markers. K9s trained for chemical signals in Project Echo are the only reliable field identifiers. Jake's blood ran cold. He looked at Harper, still asleep in Emily's arms. The scratch on her neck. The way Rex had reacted. It wasn't just a coincidence. Rex suddenly bolted upright, a deep growl rattling from his chest. His gaze locked on the front window, body rigid like a statue. Emily clutched Harper tighter, her knuckles white. Jake felt it before he saw it, a faint vibration through the floorboards, a hum so low it was almost imperceptible, like the pulse of a distant machine, and then a car's headlight swept across the living room window. Jake peeked through the blinds. A black SUV idled at the curb, tinted windows, no plates. Emily, get Harper, we're leaving. Now. Emily's breath hitched, but she didn't argue. Jake grabbed the device, shoving it into his jacket pocket. Rex stayed at his side, teeth bared, growling low. They slipped, out the back door, moving as quietly as they could across the dew-soaked grass. Jake's heart pounded in his ears. As they reached the fence, a shadow appeared at the end of the driveway. It was the man from the night before, the one in the lab coat, but this time, he wasn't alone. Two others flanked him, both dressed in dark tactical gear, earpieces in place, moving with an unsettling precision. Jake felt like a rabbit caught in a snare. Rex growled, low and menacing. His body was coiled like a spring. Jake. Miller. The man called, his voice eerily calm. You have something that belongs to us. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Emily clutched Harper tighter, her body trembling. Stay back, Jake shouted, adrenaline surging through his veins. The man took a step forward, hands raised like a peace offering. You don't understand, that child is part of something bigger. Let us help you. Rex lunged forward with a bark so loud it shook the quiet night. The man flinched, but the two in tactical gear raised their hands. Stun guns. Jake's mind raced. They had to get out. Now. Jake yanked open the side gate, motioning for Emily to run. She sprinted toward the neighbor's yard, Rex hot on her heels, barking furiously. Jake stayed behind just long enough to see the man's expression change. He wasn't angry, he wasn't surprised, he looked disappointed, as if he'd seen this all before. Jake's skin crawled. He turned and ran. They didn't stop running until they reached a diner off the highway, half-lit neon buzzing against the dark. Jake parked at the far end of the lot, heart hammering in his chest. Inside, the smell of coffee and fried food hit him like a wave. Emily slid into a booth, cradling Harper close. Rex curled up under the table, panting softly but still alert. Jake sat across from them, staring at the Formica tabletop, feeling like the world had shifted beneath his feet. Emily broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. What do we do now? Jake swallowed hard, looking down at the device in his pocket. We find out the truth, he said quietly. And we protect Harper. No matter what. If you're following this story, you know we're just getting started. Hit that subscribe button for Heroes for Animals, because this is about more than one family. It's about the dogs who save us in ways we can't even imagine. That night, as they sat in the corner booth, Jake's phone buzzed. A message, unknown. Number 1 line, You can't run forever. Jake's heart sank. He looked at Emily, then at Harper, and he knew. They were in this fight to the end. The diner hummed with quiet voices and the clink of coffee cups. But for Jake, it felt like sitting inside a pressure cooker. Every glance toward the door made his heart race. Every flicker of headlights outside sent a bolt of panic through his chest. Emily sat across from him, holding Harper close, her eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. Rex lay under the table, but his body was tense, ears up, tail thumping against the floor in a slow, steady rhythm. Jake turned the device over in his hands. This small, innocuous object that had upended their lives. What was it really? A tracker? A transmitter? A piece of a much larger puzzle? He thought of the man in the lab coat, the black SUV, the strange files he'd found online. Echo units, memory implants, K9 detection protocols. This wasn't just a random case of bad luck. They'd been targeted. Harper had been marked, and now they had to fight back. Jake's phone buzzed again. Another text. Same unknown number. We can make this easy, or you can keep running. His hands clenched into fists. He looked at Emily, who seemed to read the message in his eyes. We're not running anymore, she whispered. Jake nodded. They had to end this. The next morning, they drove to the only place Jake could think of, the police station. Daniels met them in the back parking lot, his uniform rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. Rex barked once when he saw Daniels, then quieted, almost like they shared an understanding. Jake handed over the device. Daniels took it carefully, turning it over in his hands. I pulled some strings, he said quietly. This serial number, it's real. It's tied to a classified program. Off-the-books research, they call it Project Echo. Jake swallowed hard. What does it mean for Harper? Daniels hesitated, his eyes dark. It means she's not just a baby to them. She's a data point, a test subject. Emily's breath hitched. They want to take her. Daniels nodded grimly. Not if we can stop them, Jake said. The plan was risky, but it was all they had. That night, they returned to their house, one last time. Daniel stayed parked down the street in an unmarked car. Jake set up cameras, every angle covered. Emily packed a go bag with essentials, just in case. And Rex? Rex lay by the front door, unmoving, a silent guardian in the dark. The hours crawled. Midnight passed. The house creaked, the wind whispered through the trees, and then a car. Slow, deliberate, pulling up to the curb. Jake's breath caught. He exchanged a look with Emily. This was it. The front door creaked open. The man in the lab coat stepped inside, flanked by two figures in black. Jake's heart raced. He held his phone tightly, finger hovering over the call button to alert Daniels. But before he could press it, Rex launched forward with a snarl so fierce it shook the walls. The room exploded into chaos. Rex went straight for the man in the lab coat, teeth bared, jaws clamping down on his arm. The man screamed, dropping a small device that skittered across the floor. Jake grabbed a baseball bat from behind the couch, swinging it hard at one of the agents, catching him in the ribs. Emily backed away, clutching Harper, her face pale with fear. The second agent lunged at Jake, but Daniels burst through the door, gun drawn, shouting commands. Drop it, hands up, now! The agents froze, their faces blank, like they'd been trained to show no fear. But Rex wasn't waiting. He growled deep, forcing the man in the lab coat onto his knees. And that's when Jake saw it. Tattooed on the man's wrist, a small symbol. Echo 717. In the aftermath, it all unraveled. Daniels called in backup. The lab coat man and his team were taken into custody, though no one could get them to talk. They were stone-faced like programmed machines. The device in Harper's crib, a memory data collector, recording biofeedback, emotional responses, even snippets of sensory data. They had been watching, studying, testing, and Harper? She wasn't just a baby anymore. She was evidence. Jake and Emily knew they had to leave. They packed what they could, moving out of state under new identities. Daniels helped them set it up, a favor he swore he'd never mention again. And Rex? Rex stayed by their side, always watching, always guarding. Months later, in a quiet farmhouse miles away from the chaos, Jake sat on the porch, Harper asleep in his lap, Rex at his feet. The world was calm again for now. But Jake knew the fight wasn't really over. Project Echo was still out there, and if they came for Harper once, they could come again. But they'd be ready, because sometimes the people you love and the dogs who love you back are the only family that really matters. Thank you for following this story. It's been a wild ride, and we're so grateful you've been here every step of the way. Before we go, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do to protect the ones you love when the world seems to turn against you? Stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more stories of courage, loyalty, and the incredible bond between humans and their canine heroes. Until next time.